listening, librarians. My name is Katie, and I'm here with Jennifer. And today we are going to be talking about some audiobooks that we've recently listened to that are all about the ocean and the sea, because our summer reading program is coming up. It starts May 31st, and the theme is Oceans of Possibility. So, Jennifer, what did you read?
Well, for me, thinking about books about the oceans usually comes down to two things: mermaids and pirates. So I got you both covered on
Nice.
this. The first one I read is actually a novella. It's called The Deep, and it's written by Rivers Solomon. It came out in 2019. And I had read it in paper before and really loved it, but I wanted to listen to the audiobook because the audiobook is read by Daveed Diggs, who you may know from Hamilton, and also from the rap group Clipping, who produced the song that inspired the novella. So it's a nice circular thing there. The story is about these mermaids, or as they're called in the novella, Wajinru, which means chorus of the deep. And these are the descendants of pregnant African slave women who were tossed overboard during the Middle Passage. So there's a lot that's pulled out of that history and set in this fantasy world. Yetu, who is the main character, is the historian for the Wajinru. And so she holds the memories for her people. And this is the memories going all the way back to those women who were thrown overboard. Every year they have what's called a remembrance, where Yetu then shares the memories and everybody experiences that history all over again. But because it's very traumatic, this history, and then the idea of holding all of those memories, Yetu is really struggling mentally to deal with all of this.
I imagine. And
she has some sensory processing issues on top of that. And one year during the remembrance, she's just, I got to get out of here. So while everybody else is wallowing in these memories, she escapes to the surface and discovers the world that her people left behind. So it's really interesting how she discovers a different part of this group's history and how that changes her as she has time to express her feelings and reflect and talk to someone there on the surface and then return to her group. What was really cool is this remembrance. It's not something that she sings to the people, but it's screamed. So you really get that feeling, especially in the audiobook, of the pain and the trauma that comes through. And it's showing how that trauma doesn't become entertainment. Like so many times, it's easier for us to deal with difficult parts of our history by making a show of it somehow. And this really isn't. So it's a book where you really have to kind of struggle with that history of the real world, but transposed into the fictional world. So I thought it was a really powerful look at how communities deal with that kind of trauma, whether it's at the community level or the personal level, and dealing with some of the intergenerational aspects of it. It's a really powerful little book and worth listening to or reading.
Nice. Well, that's kind of perfect as a lead into my book, because I also read a book with mermaids that took place in Africa during, when the slaving ships were coming in. And that book is Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. So that was actually narrated by Yetide Badaki, and she is an actress, and she's kind of on the up and coming. She's most known for playing Bilquis in American Gods. Okay. And I did not even know until I actually looked her name up and was like, oh, I watched that show. So This book follows Simidili, and she is a member of the Mamiwata. They are the mermaids that collect the souls of those who've been lost at sea. And the souls are collected for their patron goddess. And so one day, Simi saves a boy from drowning, and this is against the rules. She's defied the gods and is now worried that all of the Mamiwata are going to be punished, so her fellow mermaids. And so to make amends, and what the book largely follows, is this adventure she takes to do a task for their supreme creator in order to kind of like make things better. And so it was really interesting. I knew almost nothing about the Yoruba culture and the Orisha gods, just very surface information. So along the way, while she's trying to complete this task, she meets members of the Orisha. There's a lot of like African legendary creatures that are in the book. And obviously I'd never heard the language before either, so listening to the audiobook was really interesting because it's a beautiful language, and I got to experience that in the audiobook rather than trying to guess at how they might be pronounced if I had read it in print. So the main Orisha that she interacts with is Esu, who is the Yoruba trickster. And some people describe him as kind of being like Loki, but he's definitely his own thing. He craves power, and but is also very complex. So he's a really interesting character who's not all black and white like we may be used to. But it's just a fabulous world-building adventure that's very immersive, and who doesn't love to read about mermaids?
Right. And I think I remember seeing that the sequel of that book is coming out late this year. So yeah, more mermaids.
Yay.
All right, so let's skip to the pirates.
Mm-hmm.
And for my second book, I chose an older book. This one's from 2013, and it's called Cinnamon and Gunpowder by Eli Brown.
Okay.
And it had kind of crossed my radar several years ago because the idea of your main characters being a pirate, obviously, and a chef, because I'm all about the foodie books. I thought I would get to this sooner, but I just finally sat down and decided, all right, I'm going to listen to the audiobook for this. So our main characters we have Owen Wedgwood, who is a chef. I mean, a very highly trained, highly respected chef. And at the beginning of the book, he is serving Lord Ramsay, an English lord. He's very proper British, very rule Britannia, Britannia over all of the seas, that sort of fellow at the beginning of the book. But very early on, the pirate, who is actually a female, pirate captain Mad Hannah Mabbitt, comes in.
Great name.
And also her nickname is Back from the Dead Red.
Okay.
Because she has red hair, and several times she's been thought to have died in whatever skirmish or whatever. And next thing you know, there she is again.
Back from the dead.
But she and her pirates basically land and invade Lord Ramsay's house and kill Lord Ramsay, and she steals the chef away to the ship. And yeah, it's all kind of all over the place at the beginning, and you're thinking, wow, this is really kind of wild. But the book is told from Owen's viewpoint. And so, he's struggling with this, obviously, because he's had this very cushy position. He's told that she will spare him if he prepares an exquisite feast for her every Sunday. And so it's almost like a little hint of Shahrazad and the 1001 Nights there. But as the book goes along and he's sailing with the sailors and very gradually adjusting to his life at sea, after trying to escape a couple of times, he begins to understand as he talks to the sailors and talks to Matt Hanna throughout the book. He's finding out that maybe pirates aren't so bad after all, because the reason she goes after Ramsay is actually kind of a justifiable one. So you really get this feel for someone you think of as being pretty lawless turns around and becomes someone who's more like an avenger based on understanding the justification. So it's really very interesting how, through his diary, which is how this book is set up, he grows as a person because he learns that things, again, are not as black and white as they seem, and learns to have a little more empathy with people who aren't the same as him. Still very British by the end of it, but it's read by James Langton, who has that crisp British accent, and he reads Owen's lines like you can just see this guy is very haughty, and his chef's whites would always be perfect, and his knives always sharp, and always Britain rules the waves, and and then just how things change. It's very entertaining. It's a long one. It's 12 hours, but it's worth it.
Okay. Well, I didn't read a pirate book, but I did read a book where there's quite the adventure on the high seas. That was Daughter of the Deep. It's Rick Riordan's newest.
Oh, yeah.
And in this case, it was narrated by Sonila Nankani. And it's 11 hours, but I think it's totally worth it. And it actually won the 2021 Golden Voice Award for narration. So she does a good job.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of retelling of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. And if you know that story, you'll recognize some of the names in Daughter of the Deep. Our main character is Anna Dakar. She is a freshman at Harding Pencroft Boarding School. And this is a boarding school that focuses on like marine and ocean sciences and lots of high-tech technology. Like the school has a submarine, but it's definitely got a lot of wealthy kids, but there are scholarships and everything. So, there's a wide cast of characters. So she's at the school with her brother, Dev. He's a couple years older, and they live there permanently, her and Dev. And that is because about 2 years before the events of the book start, her parents died on an expedition. They had also been students at Harding Pencroft back in the day, and actually worked for Harding Pencroft as teachers once they became adults. So there's kind of some mystery behind like what really happened to the parents. So normally freshman year ends with this class excursion weekend out at sea where, they work together as a team and they've got to like do the boat all by themselves. And there's just like one or two teacher chaperones. So Anna kind of starts nervous, but she's pretty sure she's going to pass this year-end excursion. And as they're getting on the bus and starting to drive away, the school explodes.
Whoa.
And so, and it's devastating to her and her classmates because like all of their friends were there. It's everybody but the freshman class. The teachers that they loved were there. Dev was there. So, we start with kind of some tough a really bad situation, and the teacher, of course, like the sole chaperone who was with them, is like, okay, this is what's going to happen. It was probably Land Institute, and so Land Institute is their rival marine school, and the kids are of course like, it's just another high school. Why would they kill people? Well, there's a lot of secrets going on as to, who's in charge of these two schools. And Anyway, there's some shocking secrets, and to keep all of those remaining students safe, they're gonna discover things a little earlier than the school would normally do that. It turns out that they are in this arms race with Land Institute, and they're gonna go abscond away to this like remote island and like hide out on the submarine while they figure out who blew up the school. So Anna learns some really interesting things about her heritage, and this is where some of the characters from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea come in, because they're part of some folks' ancestry.
Okay.
So maybe 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea wasn't just a work of fiction. Maybe it was actually true. So it was a really interesting book. I love Rick Riordan. I'll pretty much read anything he writes. So it was a fun little ocean adventure.
Okay. Well, I know you had recommended that book to me, but I'll definitely have to check that one out sometime.
Well, thank you for joining us for Listening Librarians. We hope you read lots of ocean-themed books, pirates, mermaids, fish, whatever floats your boat. As we start our summer reading program, Oceans of Possibility, and then we will be back in July with some more audiobooks that are just whatever we feel like reading at the time.
Yeah, because summer's coming, and let's just go with some mood reading for a while.